Irish spirituality, then and now. This program explored the strength of the Celtic spiritual heritage, still very alive today in spite of enormous changes in Irish communities. Through the ancient art of storytelling and heartfelt conversations with representatives from pagan, druidic and shamanic traditions, you can embark into a wonderful world of Irish festival, myth and legends, fairies and leprechauns, shamanic drumming and journeying, and druidic ceremonies at the Hill of Tara. Learning how it has evolved over the years and exploring the crucial role of these ancient beliefs in today's modern society. Our next guest in this program is Dr. Eric Dilworth, medical doctor and owner of Ard Na Ri, Clon Mac Noise. Eric explained to you how he was led to buy Ard Na Ri in Clon Mac Noise and to develop a beautiful garden using sacred geometry, pyramid-shaped meditation chambers, a Zen garden and labyrinth. He gives you an insight on the important cultural and spiritual heritage of the ancient monks of Clon Mac Noise, and he links up with the consciousness of Lemuria 26,000 years ago. So we are here in Ard Na Ri, and I've just entered your beautiful home, Eric. And I see in your entrance hall you have a lovely rounded stone. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit how this stone came to be here in Ard Na Ri.
This stone, it is 6,000 years old. And this stone was fashioned or made by a man called Tubal Cain, who was the grandson of Cain, from Cain and Abel in the Bible. It was next heard of in the Bible. It became the coronation stone of King Solomon and then of King David. In 586 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar invaded Judea and he killed the two sons of the king of Judea, King Hezekiah. He killed his two sons and he blinded King Hezekiah. So to protect the daughter of King Hezekiah, whose name was Tara, whom Tara is called after, the prophet Jeremiah took Tara for safekeeping, along with Jacob's pillow, or the stone of destiny, and the Ark of the Covenant, and the breastplate of the high priest of the temple. And he went to Egypt. He went to Tanis first, and then he went to Saqqara in Egypt. And he left the Ark of the Covenant at Saqqara, and also the breastplate of the high priest of the temple. And he continued his journey to Ireland. When he arrived in Ireland, Tara, the daughter of King Hezekiah, married the local chief in the region which is now Tara, and he became High King of Ireland. And she began the lineage of High Kings. And every High King subsequently was crowned on this stone, the Stone of Destiny.
Right.
The last High King to be crowned on this stone was Aidan McGowan, who we know as King Arthur. And he was crowned King of Dalriada. Dalriada was a kingdom of Ireland and northern England. That was the last that was heard of this stone. First person to come here when I bought Ard Na Ri back in 99 was a man called McNulty was his name, and he was very good at on working on ley lines and measuring the energies of the ground. And he recorded the highest energy in Ireland up in the corner of the garden where the dodecahedron is. From that point, a gusher of energy comes up and 3 ley lines run from that point. So I built the Pyramid of Giza. Now, when I wanted to find out where to put it in the garden, I looked at the Tree of Consciousness and I looked at the waterfall, which is Leonardo's Cannon. I realised that I could create a Vesica-Pisces, and at the end of this Vesica-Pisces I could put the centre point. What I did basically was quite simple. I had the Tree of Consciousness and I had the waterfall, and I got a string, a cord, a long piece of cord, and I measured the distance between them, and then using the tree as a centre I drew an arc of a circle, and using the centre of the waterfall as the centre point I drew an arc of a circle. Where those two arcs crossed, that was the point for the great pyramid for the centre point.
Okay.
So they were two circles. So Visagipisces is where two circles cross each other, intersect each other, and their circumferences are on the centre point of each other.
Yeah.
And the long diagonal of Visagipisces is equal to the square root of 3. And the square root of 3 in creative geometry is called Divina Luce, or divine light. The waterfall is there, the Tree of Consciousness was there, and the Great Pyramid was there. I wondered where the end point. I knew the Great Pyramid was on one end of the square root of 3 line. I wondered where the other was. So I went to trace it and follow that diagonal, and I followed it through the house.
Mm-hmm.
And where did it end up? It ended up in the what I call the ion of the Stone of Consciousness. This thought came to me of doing workshops in the country, getting away from Dublin, and finding a small thatched cottage on the banks of the Shannon. And I came down the Shannon with a torch, but it was a full moon that night. It was the bank holiday weekend, and I arrived at Clon Mac Noise. So I went up to the monastery, and I lay on a tombstone out at the door of the Temple of the Kings, and I was looking up at the moon, admiring the beautiful night. And then the next morning I went into the tourist office, and I picked up a book. It was the Annals of Clon Mac Noise, battered old book, and I asked her were there any houses for sale. There were 3 houses in Clon Mac Noise, but this house she felt was sold a year ago. So I got directions, and I came down to what is now Ard Na Ri, and I noticed a for sale sign underneath the sheepskins. So I rang the auctioneer, discovered the house was for sale. I went off down to Shannon. I came back up to Shannon 2 days later on the bank holiday Monday. He told me that the owner of the house her name was Nan Malloy, but the tombstone I had been lying on the night I arrived was the tombstone of her great-great-great-grandfather, Peter Malloy. I opened the book, the Annals, and I started reading about Scota, whom Scotland is called after, and how she was the daughter of Éireann, and she married Neil of Scythia, and they had a son, Gael, who Ireland's called after. And Gael is buried in Scotland, and Scota is buried here at Clon Mac Noise. And Scota came to Ireland in 1341 BC. Probably what I've become aware of is that there was a very strong link between Ireland and Egypt. And recently it just came to me. I've been studying herbal medicine this last year. There was a continent of Lemuria 26,000 years ago, and Lemuria was about to sink. We know that the Lemurians knew 1,000 years before it was going to sink, so they actually came to Ireland. So Ireland was very much seeded with that consciousness from Lemuria. The Lemurians who had come to Ireland went and seeded Atlantis and lived in Atlantis, and they became the kings of Atlantis. So we know our Tuatha Dé Danann, our ancient ancestors, they were from the kingdoms of Atlantis. We have the Dagda, we have Morrigan, Nuada, and we have Lula Vada, and these were all Atlantean kings and queens. They are the masters of our ancient Celtic cultural, spiritual heritage. And then we know that when there was a link, there was that strong link between Lemuria, between Atlantis, and then between Egypt, because Ireland was really a centre of culture, of spirituality. So we find that the Scota, who was actually the great-granddaughter of Thutmose III, who founded the White Brotherhood, from which came the Rosicrucians and from which came the Essenes. So Scota was connected altogether with 8 pharaohs. Her half-uncle was Tutankhamun. Éireann, her father, was a pharaoh. Grandfather Akhenaten was a pharaoh. Her grandfather on her father's side, Ai, was a pharaoh. Her great-great-grandfather was Thutmose III. So she had this vast connection between Ireland. And so it was only natural that Scota, looking for some place new, starting a new life, would come to Ireland, where there was a very strong spiritual link. So it's not surprising that we find Jeremiah naturally coming here with the Stone of Destiny in 586 BC. And of course we know that the Romans, they conquered Europe, but they never got as far as Ireland. So Ireland was always the womb of spirituality. It was untouched by Roman influence, and it had that real strong connection with the Rosicrucians, with Egypt, with Atlantis, with Lemuria. And we know Scota came here 1341 BC and was buried here, and when she came here she founded the kingdom of Uisneach, and we know that Uisneach was the capital of Ireland at that time, and the 5 provinces linked into Uisneach, and they all gathered at Uisneach. And when Scotia began the tradition of royalty being buried at Clon Mac Noise. So it was no wonder that Ciarán came here to set up his monastery back in 532 AD. He came to Clon Mac Noise because it is a very central part of Ireland, and it had that spiritual tradition, spiritual heritage. Clon Mac Noise is right in the centre of Ireland, where the Escarida, which is the longest road in Ireland, and the Escarida was the Slieve Moor. It was the old road that connected Clon Mac Noise with Cashel, with Uisneach and with Tara. The Escarida and the Shannon that cuts Ireland into the 4 quarters. So it was a very prominent spiritual site. Well, really what Ciarán did, he just really ignited the spark of spirituality that was there, that went back to Scotia, it went back to Atlantis, it went back to Lemuria, it was very connected with Egypt. All the princes of Europe came to study here. Thomas Aquinas was educated by a monk from Clon Mac Noise. He was educated in Celtic spirituality, and at that time you could be excommunicated if you were caught teaching Celtic spirituality. And we know that Francis of Assisi was very much influenced by teaching from monks from Clon Mac Noise, and also the great mystic Hildegard of Bingen. And the prayer, "Make me a channel of your peace," that is old Celtic spirituality that came from Clon Mac Noise. So such is the tradition of Clon Mac Noise that became the light of Europe in the Dark Ages. And I feel there's an old spark of spirituality here waiting to be reignited. And we've seen all the religions of the world, and I think it's the time now to return to spirituality. Religions were great, they helped us on our way, but now we need to move beyond the mind. We've been living very much in a thought sphere, and I think people are looking for something beyond the mind.
Our next guest in this programme is Jaya Moran, author of the Irish Mythological Wheel of Life and Irish Fairy Cards. Jaya draws us into the magical world of fairies and leprechauns, and she explains how working with them can be of great benefit to us. She introduced the Irish Mythological Wheel of Life and the practical ways in which this can assist us in our everyday lives. Jaya, you're quite familiar with the world of leprechauns and fairies and elementals. Can you share your insight with our listeners?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the leprechauns and the world of magic, especially pertaining to Ireland, to the gods and goddesses that are the great keepers of the land, and to the elementals who mind our beautiful forests and woods and streams and seas and oceans. And of course the leprechaun himself, who is in fact a sun god, Lu, came down to earth to bring down the sparkling, shiny, bright, passionate energy of the sun, to bring a spark into our day, and who also looks after all the crystals, golds and silvers in the earth, the treasures that we have. And we know him as sitting there with his pot of gold beneath the end of the rainbow. So we're always looking for this leprechaun with the pot of gold, and really it's a search for our own potential. The leprechaun's pot, the big black pot, is a symbol of the hara, which is not a chakra but an energy centre below the navel, full of infinite energy, and which children display Godot, jumping and prancing about all day and driving you mad. And if this energy is not repressed, it keeps us very alive and very dynamic as we grow up and begin to develop our talents and abilities, which are symbolised by the gold held within the crock itself. So it is in fact a very powerful image. Its purpose is to awaken us to using our energies and living lightly and brightly like the rainbow, a colourful life.
And I was going to say the colours of the rainbows, of course, symbolise the colours of the chakras?
They do, yes. This is, in fact, the various levels of our cells. As you probably know, the red is our impulse for survival, and the orange is for warmth and relationship, and the yellow is for self-identity. You know, I am the great I am. And the green is for the heart, which is for the oneness and the harmony. And in fact, it's where the planet is about to evolve next from the power centre, the yellow, into the green, into the heart and the oneness and the sharing. Whole planet is about to evolve into that state together. And then we go up to the throat, which is blue and full of powers of creation and communication. And the deep blue is always for peace and silence. And of course, the lilac is for the cosmic beyond, which is also part of us. We're infinite beings.
And these fairies and leprechauns were part of our heritage here in Ireland.
Well, yes.
Tourists have been looking for leprechauns over time, and some of us might dismiss this is kind of all.
Well, people always lived very close to the concept of fairies, and they talked about them, and they left the front door open and they left the back door open, so the fairies could traipse in and out and across the floor of the little houses they used to live in. And they often sometimes would lose somebody for a while to fairyland, and of course they'd come back eventually without any age on them at all. And of course at Maytime they left out gifts, and other times always left out gifts and milk and honey and fruit and flowers and stuff like that for the fairy people. They certainly believed and entertained them and celebrated them and enjoyed them.
And what would we gain from continuing to celebrate the fairies and the leprechaun?
A feeling of closeness to nature, and also a kind of and also they do bring a sparkle into your energy field for sure, and they do uplift you during the day into a place of trust and innocence, and really help your magical child to keep going along with the adult in the world we need to live in.
Tell us about the unicorn.
Well, the unicorn is a very ancient mythical animal. It symbolises great purity of being, and it used to actually really romp around freely in the woods until we misbehaved, and for some reason they didn't like our misbehaviour and withdrew behind the veil, so we can't really see them very much. The odd person can. Now, the unicorn, if you do happen to see it even in vision, it will bring you, with its lovely long crystal horn, the gift of wisdom and insight into your daily problems, and it'll fill your day with enchantment.
You have designed a beautiful book called the Irish Alchemy Cards, which go together with the cards that you've designed. Now, there's quite a number of cards, and each one of them has a beautiful picture. And I was wondering, can you tell us more about this Irish mythological wheel of life?
Well, it's based on the 8 directions, which was the most primitive map of consciousness knowing to man on the planet. So the north is the mind, and the south is love, and the east is spirit, and the west is material being, and so on. And I placed within each direction 7 cards, one for each chakra, which included the animals in the base chakra, the survival, the body, the instinct. And I put gods and goddesses and very noble principles in the crown chakra, and a range of images in between.
And how do we use this wheel of life?
Well, you can do various layouts, or you can just pick a few cards and see what images you get, which will inspire you significantly for your question or the day ahead, and remind you of just there are more possibilities. Just stay open to the magic and the flow of life.
Could you tell us a little story?
Well, I'd like to tell you about one of my favourite, which is called Piebald Ponies, and this is a card honouring the gypsies, and of course it's very close in our hearts here, the gypsies and their green caravans and their campsites, especially from my youth, and they always signified freedom. So the piebald ponies are really our energy, romping and playing very freely and very spontaneously, and they all not fitting in, of course, with the status quo. The gypsies don't belong to the status quo. They're too free. They travel around with no map, and they follow the energy of the ponies, whichever direction it takes us, reminding us to follow our energy. Now, the noble thing about these gypsies is that they are the people from the ancient mystery schools, which were plundered at some point in history, and they took care of the knowledge of the tarot and the crystal balls and the herbs and the healings, and they preserved them, in fact, through the dark ages and dark times up to this day, whereas now we have freely access to all these helpful tools and sacred mysteries. So big thanks to the gypsy people of the road.
There are 3 types of little people: the little people, the fairies, and the elementals. Is there a difference between the 3?
Well, the way I see it is the little people are the Tuatha Danann themselves, who when the Celts came across the land and wanted to take over and go into war, the Tuatha Danann had no instruments made of metal and didn't want to fight, so they used their magic to make themselves small, handed the land over to Amergin, disappeared as small people with all their magic into the sacred sites and the hills and the rivers and the lands of Ireland. So Ireland is holding all this magic for the world. And the fairies are essential beings, little playful spirits, full of love, spontaneity, wonder, delight, trust, all those lovely qualities, strength, of sense of faith, hope and charity, whatever you like. They're all there in these little fairies who play around and bring us lightness of heart all the time. And the elementals I see are again like fairies, but they are the worker bees of the fairyland, who keep the waters clean and the woods healthy and the oceans moving and the air and the clouds moving. So they are the ones that take care of the nature and are working away pretty hard.
In conclusion, the underlying message of spiritual leaders in Irish ancient and modern societies shows us the strength and the power of our spiritual heritage and the importance of faith in our everyday lives and in rebuilding a sense of community. We are now going to enter into a guided meditation, integrating what we learned from Jaya and the leprechauns and fairies, and our visit to Ard Na Ri in Clon Mac Noise. Take a nice, long, deep breath and allow your whole body to relax. Close your eyes, removing yourself from your daily preoccupations. Part your lips a little to release your jaws, allowing your tongue to rest softly in your mouth, and bring your awareness to the breath. Notice the flow of breath in and out of your body. Notice the depth of your breath. Notice the effect the breath has on the rest of your body. Allow the breath to reach deeper and deeper within yourself. Deeper and deeper. Relaxing your legs, your arms, your spine. Relaxing the muscles of your neck. Allowing your whole systems to relax. And bring yourself into the dream world. You are now in Ard Na Ri, in this beautiful garden with wooden pyramids and a Zen garden, with a waterfall and the magic of crystals, and you walking through the labyrinths, letting go of all that's been bothering you, to enter into the center, your center, where all is one. And you find yourself moving back from this center, refreshed, re-energized, revitalized, bouncing around the garden, maybe even meeting some leprechauns and fairies along the way. Stepping into the pyramids, breathing in the energy from the crystals, finding that place of stillness within yourself. All around you, everything is quiet. Everything is still. You feel as if your cells have been completely uplifted. A new energy is flowing through you. A lighter, brighter energy. Preparing yourself to return from this journey, taking with you all that you have received. And when you feel ready, allow your breathing to deepen. Bring your awareness back to your physical body, your position within the room. And on an out breath, open your eyes to a new moment. You were listening to Irish Spirituality, Then and Now. Produced and presented by Marie-Angéline Lascaux, this program was made with the support of Sound and Vision Broadcasting Funding Scheme, a BCI initiative.